Whew, right? I had to go through like a million videos to find that when I was like sobbing in the middle of Starbucks. This is Memorial Day weekend, right? Memorial Day is about remembering fallen soldiers. Did you know that? In the South, they kind of extend that to like all loved ones. And so my relatives sent me pictures of my parents' graves, and they do a thing called decoration, a Memorial Day weekend or the weekend before sometimes, where they just decorate graves and they remember people who went on. But the way it started was to remember Civil War soldiers who had died. The Southern Army did such a great job, the Confederate Army, of remembering their people that eventually it just became adopted as a holiday to remember people who died in combat. So Veterans Day, I know, is in the fall. That's to kind of honor all veterans, but Memorial Day is about remembering those who died. So just a couple numbers. 498,332 soldiers died in the Civil War. 500,000 people. Can your brain wrap its head around that? 405,399 in World War II. 116,516 in World War I. 90,220 in the Vietnam War, 86,087 in all the other American wars combined. I say that today about 2 American soldiers die every day, overseas mostly by accident, illness, or suicide. Just let that hit you for a second. More than 1.1 million Americans have died in American wars. So we're just going to take like 5 seconds of silence and just kind of honor that sacrifice tonight. You know, sacrifice is said to be the greatest one anyone could ever make. And soldiers do that on behalf of their families, but also us, right? So people they've never met. So it's not that much of a stretch to think that I would basically do anything to protect my family. But I'm not sure how far I might go to protect your family, right? It's a big deal. It's kind of the greatest sacrifice anybody can make. And so this is one of the pictures that I found around Memorial Day. Greater love has no one than this, that he laid down his life for his friends. That's not actually original to the United States military. That's actually the words of Jesus when he said this. And of course, he was talking about himself. But he was also talking about us, kind of an encouragement for what we can do to offer our lives for something great. Now, we could live our lives with mediocre love, I suppose. Mediocrity has never really seemed that awesome to me, honestly. I would rather go down in a bowl of flames than be mediocre. Like, that sounds horrific to me. I think great love is what we're shooting for, but look what great love does. It asks you to lay down your life sometimes, right? Now, most of us are not going to get to a place where we actually have to die for one another. Let's be real. At least not the way our lives look today, right? But God does still call us to give offerings. So maybe not of this magnitude, but tonight we're talking about what it means to bring an offering to the Lord and what that looks like in our lives when we're not in combat, you know, or we're not like dodging bullets. Now remember something, when we talk about giving offerings to God, like we did tonight in worship, like we do as we go about our lives and we pause and think, you know, what does God want me to do with this? What should I do with this? We are offering things to a holy God. Now, he is very intimate, and he is our friend, but he's also really holy. And we see that in Leviticus. I've been reading Leviticus and Numbers and all that. It's just the way you read through the Bible, like that. And I've just been caught over and over again by this. Do what I tell you. Live what I tell you. I am God. Now, why do you think he has to say, I am God? Like, duh, you know? Because we forget, don't we? Don't desecrate my holy name. I insist on being treated with holy reverence among the people of Israel. I am God who makes you holy and brought you out of Egypt to be your God. I am God. He's awesome. And so what does it mean to bring an offering? We're going to talk about tonight. A pleasing offering requires. Remember, Jesus gave an offering, right? And that's what we celebrate all the time. I would say every Sunday, but if we only do it every Sunday, that's kind of sad little faith, right? We do it all the time, every day, hopefully every minute. You know, at least that's the goal. to remember the sacrifice that Jesus gave on the cross, gave his whole world, gave his whole life, gave everything for us. And so he is our example. He is like the forerunner of what faith is supposed to look like in the Father. And so all these things that we're going to look at, what a pleasing offering requires, are things that he's already done. And he showed us the way to that. The first thing that giving a pleasing offering requires is bringing our best. Our best. Now, in Leviticus, I will be quoting some from Leviticus, because Leviticus is all about bringing offerings and all about all the instructions surrounding those offerings. Fire offerings, grain offerings, dove offering, every kind of offering you can think of. An offering for accidentally doing something, an offering for intentionally doing something, an offering for stumbling over and falling down on the Sabbath. I mean, Leviticus is full of rules, because remember, they didn't have a government, okay? They didn't have a welfare system. This is why they tithed the way they did in the Old Testament. You had to bring part of your thing for everybody who couldn't afford it. It's a very different culture, and so we don't need all of these rules now, but there are some really general, great principles that we bring from these things. And so I just want to read you a passage, and I read this, something just went, set that aside for some time when we talk about offerings. The Lord said to Moses, "Give Aaron and his sons and all the Israelites these instructions, which apply both to native Israelites and to the foreigners living among you. If you present a gift as a burnt offering to the Lord, whether it is to fulfill a vow or as a voluntary offering, you will be accepted only if your offering is a male animal with no defects. It may be a bull, a ram, or a male goat. And in other places, it may be a dove. I mean, it depends on how much money you have. He doesn't always require something massive. In some cases, even if you're very poor, just grain. But whatever you present must be without defect. Do not present an animal with defects, because the Lord will not accept it on your behalf. If you present a peace offering to the Lord from the herd or the flock, whether it is to fulfill a vow or as a voluntary offering, you must offer a perfect animal. It may have no defect of any kind. You must not offer an animal that is blind, crippled, or injured, or that has a wart. Catch it, okay? You're looking at the animal for these things. This is what God will not accept. It can't have a wart, a skin sore, or a scab. I mean, I'm like, man, I'm never without a scab. And just like, people keep looking at these injuries like, cool, mountain biking. I'm like, no, I fell off my deck. That's the story of my life. It's not ever anything cool. Scabs all the time. Just don't even guess that it's cool. It's never cool. But anyway, they can't have a skin sore. They can't have a scab. Such animals must never be offered on the altar as special gifts to the Lord. If a bull or lamb has a leg that is too long or too short, I mean, God is like going overboard, right? I mean, he really cannot trust them to just pick up on the principle and run with it. We see this in the Old Testament. And so he's like, let me spell it out for you, literally. It can't have too short or too long legs. Where am I? It may be offered as a voluntary offering, but it may not be offered to fulfill a vow. If an animal has damaged testicles or is castrated, sorry, but I really feel like it's helpful to see like how far he goes to show. You may not offer it to the Lord. You must never do this in your own land, and you must not accept such an animal from foreigners and then offer it as a sacrifice to your God. Such animals will not be accepted on your behalf, for they are mutilated or defective. And he goes on and on and on and on about this stuff. What's the point? Don't bring our damaged junk to God. They know what they're doing. It's not like every animal in their herd has a leg that's too short, right? Probably one does, and that's the one they want to bring to God. Generally, God doesn't tell us these things just because. He usually tells them these things because they were doing it. People were grabbing up the crappy ones and giving them to God. Like, well, nobody's going to eat that one anyway. It's just going on an altar to be burned up before the holy, pure, awesome God of everything. And he's like, who do you think gave you the herd? Who do you think gave you the perfect animals that you want to hold to yourself? You're going to bring me that? Don't bring me your junk. Bring me your best. And see, this is where we get scared with things. We're like, well, if we bring him our best, we're not going to have any of the good ones left. But the thing is, he's the one that gave us the good ones anyway, right? We only have a couple good ones because God gave them to us. We like to think, no, it's because of my amazing abilities as a shepherdess or something. I have created and enabled this one. No, it is all God from the beginning, right? So when we offer something, we just give him back what's already his. But we have the ability to give him the defects, or we have the ability to give him the best. And he says, I want your absolute best. Are we bringing him leftovers? What are we bringing to God when we give him offerings? Now, remember, when we're talking about offerings, We're talking about all the capital: spiritual capital, intellectual capital, physical capital, financial capital, relational capital, all these. Every area of life. I'm not just talking about money. We think of in terms of money because that's all we ever think about, right, and stuff. But I'm not talking about offering money, although that's one part of it. I'm talking about everything that we give to God. We are giving it back. When he says, I want the firstborn Levite, every family of Levites, I want the firstborn to be dedicated to me. He's like, I'm the one that gave him to you anyway, right? Remember that whole thing about stewardship? We are stewards. He gives it to us for a while. He asks for it back. And he expects us to do with it while we have it what he would be doing with it. That's what in a kingdom, that's what happens. See you later, steward. Take care of my stuff. I'm going to come ask for it back. When we get into troubles, we start thinking it's our stuff. So I'm going to use it the way I want to use it because it's mine. It's not ours. Unfortunately, he had to kind of show the Israelites this the hard way a lot. Just a thought that came to me as I was preparing for this is Cain and Abel. Do you remember Cain and Abel? First twins. Firstborn children. Both of them brought an offering to God. And it says that, the Bible in Genesis 4 says that God looked upon Abel's sacrifice as favorable and not Cain's. We get distracted by the fact that his was meat and his was vegetables. That's not the point. The point is not what they brought. The point is what their attitude was. And unfortunately, we don't see a whole lot about these two guys. All we know is how God responded. He says, yours is not good. Go back and figure it out. And he says, oh, I like yours. And they're brothers, so they get jealous. And Cain starts thinking, well, if I kill this guy, I guess I'll be, number one, because how many people are on the earth? I don't know. It's weird. It kind of like messes with my mind to think about everything that was happening at that time. But if I kill him, somehow I'm going to be better in God's sight. I don't know what he was thinking. He must have just been blind with jealousy and rage or something. So he kills his brother. Before that, it says, when Cain gets jealous, God says to him, why this tantrum? Why the sulking? If you do well, won't you be accepted? And if you don't do well, sin is lying in wait for you, ready to pounce. It's out to get you. You've got to master it. And he doesn't, does he? He becomes overcome with it. Why? Because his offering wasn't great and someone else's was. And here's the thing. We can get sidetracked sometimes with what's going on with somebody else and how great their offering is to the Lord and how great the things are that he's giving back. When really that's not the point. He just wants our best. My best is not the same as your best. Your best may be unbelievably better. That's all he cares about is me bringing mine. And laying it down before him and saying, I had 10 other ones, but this one looked like the absolute best I could come up with, and it's yours. And whether that is a relationship or money or a season of life that you feel like, man, I would really love to do this with my summer, but God is telling me to do this. Whatever it is, there are a million different ways we can give offerings to God, but no matter what it is, he wants our best. Am I bringing my best? So a pleasing offering requires bringing our best, and it requires putting everything on the table. Everything. There's a story in Mark 10. I'm going to read it from the Message. It says, as Jesus went out into the street, a man came running up, greeted him with great reverence, and said, good teacher, what must I do to get eternal life? Jesus said, why are you calling me good? No one is good, only God. You know the commandments. Don't murder, don't commit adultery, don't steal, don't lie, don't cheat, honor your father and mother. He said, teacher, I have from my youth kept them all. Jesus looked him hard in the eye and loved him. He said, there's one thing left. Go sell whatever you own and give it to the poor. All your wealth will then be heavenly wealth, and come follow me. Remember how God's always telling us to trade up to spiritual capital? Whatever other capitals we have to get rid of to get to spiritual capital, to get to power and wisdom and love, God says, give it all up to get that. The man's face clouded over. This was the last thing he expected to hear. You know why? You know what he's really good at? Following rules. And he did it really well. And Jesus looked at him and said, that's not your problem. Go sell everything, give it to the poor, and then come follow me. This was the last thing he expected to hear, and he walked off with a heavy heart. He was holding on tight to a lot of things and not about to let go. Now, the heading in my Bible for this, and it's probably something similar in whatever translation you have, is to enter God's kingdom. That's the heading. And this whole transaction happens regarding whether or not this man is going to enter God's kingdom. Think about it. He walked away from God's kingdom for stuff. That sounds ill-advised. Ooh, hello. That was the stool. He walked away from God's kingdom. Now, it may have come back later. We don't really know the rest of the story. All we know is that right then, Mark was trying to get something across when he showed this little interaction where Jesus looked at someone, loved him, and said, I could let you off the hook. I mean, you are doing the right things. But your heart is wrapped up in things. It's wrapped up in your material stuff. It's wrapped up in your status. It's wrapped up in all the wealth. I want you to give it up, because you know what God will ask us to give up? Everything. Everything. You say, that doesn't seem fair. I thought the whole point was just like to believe that Jesus died and then to kind of, try to be good. Nope. That's not the point. The point is to give it all. Every single day. Every single thing. To give it up. Because what we receive in return is eternal life, joy, mercy, love, truth, unbelievable wealth. As long as we hold on to this stuff, he was holding on tight to a lot of things, and he was not about to let go. And you know what happened? You know what Jesus did? He ran after him and dropped down on his knees and said, please, 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 I know I'm God, but I'm so lame that all I can do is just beg all of you human beings to follow me. That's what we think of God sometimes, right? He's just kind of sitting around like this pathetic little thing that's just kind of waiting for us to one day wake up and think, I guess I want to spend time with you maybe for half a second before I go on with the really important things. He's holy God. And Jesus says, if that's what you want, you may have it. And he goes on. He doesn't run after him. He doesn't beg him. He doesn't try to talk him down and say, okay, wait, 50%. Give me 50%. Give up 10%. That's a tithe, right? 10% of our income. That's what we're supposed to be giving to the Lord. That's what belongs to him. Jesus was like, it's all or nothing. Because he's not that pathetic little God that we think of him sometimes, who's sitting around in a corner just begging us to spend time with him. I mean, I catch myself sometimes I'll get to you. Hold on a second. Creator of the universe, most amazing holy being, beyond time, self-existing, incomprehensible. God is wanting to spend time with me or wanting this thing of me, and I'm kind of like, maybe eventually we'll get around to you. He's God, he's holy, and he asks for our best, and he asks for everything. Everything. In Mark 12, it says, Jesus sat down near the collection box in the temple and watched as the crowds dropped in their money. How would you like that? You're dropping in your offering, and Jesus is sitting there watching. Must have been awkward. Many rich people put in large amounts. Then a poor widow came and dropped in 2 small coins. And Jesus called his disciples to him and said, I tell you the truth, this poor widow has given more than all the others who are making their contributions. For they gave a tiny part of their surplus, but she, poor as she is, has given everything she had to live on. Think about that for a second. She's gave up everything she has to live on. She's a widow, which means in that culture, it's not like she just goes and gets a job or gets unemployment. You know what I'm saying? There was hopefully she had family. Women didn't work and make money in that day like that. If they were this is why it says take care of widows and orphans, It's not like our culture these days. They had no way to support themselves, and yet here she is giving 2 small coins. The Message version of these last couple verses says, Jesus called his disciples over and said, the truth is that the poor widow gave more to the collection than all the others put together. All the others gave what they'll never miss. She gave extravagantly what she couldn't afford. She gave her all. Are we giving God things that we'll never miss anyway? I'm not going to miss that little chunk. We'll give that to God. I think I can probably get by with everything else. Are we holding anything back? Is there anything that we're like, all of this, choose from any of it, God, but don't look at my little hoard over here in the corner. None of that's for you. That's the stuff I got to save for a rainy day. It's all for me. And you should understand, because you gave it to me in the first place, that's not the way it works. He will find it. And if he wants to, he will take it because it belongs to him anyway. So might as well give it up joyfully. And that's the last thing a pleasing offering requires. Bring our best, putting everything on the table, and a joyful attitude. Joyful attitude. 2 Corinthians 9, Paul's talking to the Corinthians, and he says, remember this. A farmer who plants only a few seeds will get a small crop, but the one who plants generously will get a generous crop. You must each decide in your heart how much to give. And don't give reluctantly or in response to pressure, for God loves a person who gives cheerfully. Now understand the context of this. Paul is writing to the Corinthians asking for an offering of money, okay, for another church. He's saying, you have more than you need. They have less than they need. We're all members of the same body. Give it up, because next time it might be you. And he's saying all this in response to like a farmer who think about it, sows seed sparingly. I got to hold back all the seed for myself. What's going to happen if next winter? No, they sow it all. They plant it all. And then they get a really good crop. God willing, right? God will generously provide all you need. Then you will always have everything you need and plenty left over to share with others. As the scriptures say, they share freely and give generously to the poor. Their good deeds will be remembered forever. For God is the one who provides seed for the farmer. He's like, it's not yours anyway. Who do you think gave it to you? And then bread to eat. In the same way, he will provide and increase your resources and then produce a great harvest of generosity in you. He not only provides for and increases our resources, but he gives us this growing sense of generosity when we give offerings. Whether it's to God directly, it's to people, it's to anybody. It's to people who are mean, people who are nice, people who are our friends, people we've never met. I mean, I drove by today at Arby's on the way here. A woman, she had a van that said, love more. She had written on it with something. And when I went by, she smiled and waved, and she got behind me in line. I paid for her dinner. Why? I don't know. She said, love more. Okay. $8. I don't know what she was buying with $8. I mean, to me, it's like all off the dollar bidding, but whatever. $8. I said, am I able to pay for hers? I don't know who she is. The guy was looking at me like, okay. You know, like, I have extra. She said, love more. I'll take her advice. There she goes. Reward. Riding on your van. I don't know. She looked awesome. She looked like the kind of person I'd be friends with if I weren't in a hurry. So I was like, let's just, you know what I'm saying? Like, just sow it everywhere. Does it matter? It doesn't matter who it is. It doesn't matter if anybody deserves it. It doesn't matter. What it increases in me is it breaks the power of money in my life. It breaks the power of my things and having to protect and hoard to myself. Because what happens if I don't have enough? And it makes me feel good, you know? Doesn't it feel good when we're generous? That's what Paul is trying to give to these people. Basically, in this passage, they receive more than the people who are receiving the offering. If you go through and count everything that the giver receives and everything that the receiver receives, the giver gets a whole lot more out of the deal. When we give, whatever it is that we're giving, when we present an offering, if we give it all, and if we give it joyfully, we get more. You will be enriched in every way so that you can always be generous. And when we take your gifts to those who need them, they will thank God. So 2 good things will result from this ministry of giving. The needs of the believers in Jerusalem will be met, and they will joyfully express their thanks to God. It says they will get what they need, and then God will get glory. What more do we need in life? Before they have seen God richly blessing them, this is what Paul's doing. He's saying, if you give, God will take care of you. But I want you to give before you see God take care of you. I want you to trust that all of it comes from God anyway. There's this passage in Exodus. I won't necessarily read it. It's just amazing. They're building the temple, the tabernacle technically, and there's a bunch of stuff they need. And they basically go out to these several 100,000, maybe a couple million people and say, we need all of these things. And it's like jewels and different kinds of linen and different kinds of thread. I mean, all these things, some copper, some silver, some gold, for all the different things that they're going to put into the tabernacle, all the things that they're going to need. They ask the people to give offerings. They say, this is all the stuff that we need. We need it from you guys. Come bring it. And there's this part at the end of Exodus, at the end of this passage, Exodus 36, 2-7, where the craftsmen who were working on the sanctuary left their work. They went to Moses and reported, the people have given more than enough materials to complete the job the Lord has commanded us to do. So Moses gave the command, and this message was sent throughout the camp. Men and women, don't prepare any more gifts for the sanctuary. We have enough. So the people stopped bringing their sacred offerings. The contributions were more than enough to complete the whole project. Can you imagine somebody standing up here and saying, stop bringing stuff? Everything that we need to reach Summit County has been collected. Don't worry about bringing anything else and just enjoy it, because we have more than enough. That would be sweet, right? Because of the joy these people were taking in their offerings. We don't have any more poor people. We're done. All the poor people have food. Everybody has an education. Who needs it? All the refugees who have fled Sudan are well taken care of. There's no more need. We just all sit down and have a potluck. But that'd be awesome. That only happens when people give. When people who have too much give to people who don't have enough. Simple, right? It's not communism. We're not decreasing what everybody gets. We're saying if you have more, give it to those who have less. There's nothing wrong with having more as long as we give it up, right? Am I giving with a grumbling attitude, or am I joyfully giving him back everything he's asking of me? Pleasing offering requires bringing our best, putting everything on the table, and a joyful attitude. And then let me just say, to do this well, how do we do this well? I know it kind of probably sounds like a lot. This is sort of we'd call a high challenge message. We've been talking a lot about the covenant of God, how much he loves us, how he's here for us all the time, how he's like a father. I mean, that message last week Eric spoke was amazing. Made me cry a few times, talking about being a daddy and his kids and saying, I love you, you know. So all that's kind of the foundation of everything I'm saying tonight, which is, let's give up stuff. Let's give him offerings. How do we do this well? Number one, we have to exercise trust. There's a story I saw on a Facebook. Somebody linked it on Facebook. It's the only way I ever see anything, I guess. And it's about this boy whose father has been in and out of prison all his life. He's never really known him. And finally, for the first time, his father gave him something. It was $250 for a band trip. And this kid really wanted to go on this trip. And so he was like, wow, okay. Who knows if he got it by honest means, but he sent me this. This is really nice. I'm happy to go on this. He really wanted to go. Then he found out that his father had just been arrested a couple of days before. This is a true story. It was just like a news story. For stealing out of an old lady's purse as she was visiting her husband's grave, who had been dead for a week. She left her car to go stand at his grave and pay her respects, and this man snuck into her car, grabbed all her money, several $100s out of her wallet. Now that's kind of low, right? And this teenage kid is like, yep, he sees his face, that's my dad. So he sets up a meeting with this lady and says, I feel like somebody should apologize to you for this. I'm so sorry on behalf of my father. This has been my whole life like this, but he's this like 16-year-old boy like taking responsibility. And he says, I don't know if this is yours or not, but I feel like I need to give you back this $250. And she says, I accept it. So he's just given up everything that he's ever received from his dad. Band trip out the window. She's just received this money. She says, and now that I've accepted it and it's mine, I can do whatever I want to with it. Here it is back. I want you to go on this. And I really thought this was a pretty beautiful picture of the trust that we have to have in God when we give up offerings. Because if we're afraid he's going to take everything good from us, we're not going to give him anything. We're going to go hide it in a closet and lock the door and try to convince ourselves that we have the only key, like he's God. But we do this stuff, right? We can offer things to him. He may not give them back. But if we have the right heart when we give them, okay, it's gone. But often he does. I found often he does. I will give him some sort of desire or passion in my heart, something that I've always wanted, and say, there, that was rough. And he says, oh, thank you, Leila. I appreciate that. Thanks for giving that to me. I accept that. Here you go. You can have that one back. He's just good. He loves us. He's a good father. But when we hoard those things to ourselves, think about the sense of empowerment, responsibility, sacrifice, and joy that young man had in that interaction, as opposed to just keeping it and thinking, dang, poor old lady, I'm going to go on my band trip. You know what I'm saying? But think about that compared to that. Yeah, we can get away with going on our band trips, you know? We don't have to give the money back. We can live our whole lives like that. Or we could take a risk and say, I'm going to give this to you. I don't know what it looks like on the other side. I'm actually kind of scared. But I know that you're good. And I'm choosing to trust you. And so here you go. Do with it whatever you want. And more often than I can even count, God has said, that's all I wanted. I just wanted to break the power of that. You know, if that man who talked to Jesus had gone and sold everything that he had and given it all to the poor, that doesn't mean he was going to be poor his whole life. I've done that stuff. You've done that stuff. You start giving stuff up to God, it's like, okay. I mean, I can tell you stories. My entire testimony revolves around giving up a very lucrative career, hundreds of thousands of dollars set aside for my college education. I mean, when I went to Bible college, I was like, well, one thing you can be happy for, Mom and Dad, it's stinking cheap compared to where I was going before. Woo! Like, that's happy? No, they were not happy, but that gave up all that. And then it's like, I mean, Eric and I cannot outrun the blessings that God gives us. It's not wealth like that was, and what I had in my head it would be like. It's better. Because the sacrifice of it was important. And I thought, I'm never going to ever have anything. I'm never going to have anything. My family looked at me. My dad was like, you know you're going to be poor. You're going to do what? You're going to preach, and now you're going to marry one. I mean, when I got engaged to Eric, they were like, clink, the last nail in the coffin. Like, great. You're not even going to marry a doctor? What is wrong with you? My whole world was like, I was like, hey, I gave this up a while back. But I mean, I can't even tell you. Wealth, I'm not talking about financial wealth, although we have enough and more. Every kind of wealth we could ever want, God has bestowed on us. But only when we offer it. There are other things it has taken me years to give up. And I can look back, and if I were a person who regrets things, and I'm not, I rarely even remember things. If I were, I would look back and think, gosh, if I'd given that up 8 years ago, where would I be in my life right now? If I just laid that down and not been so afraid, I might have been able to empower more people. I might have been able to trust more people. I might have been able to do more. You know? It's not worth it to hold on. Trust and then gratitude. You know, this thing with these soldiers with Memorial Day, every video that I pulled up, way too many, like I said, they're like, are you okay? I know everybody at the Silver Zone Starbucks, they're like, you need a tissue? Like, it's Memorial Day. That's beautiful. Just laying on his grave, you know, it's horrible. Whew, I'm starting to cry now. All these amazing things, you know, soldiers give up their lives and we go on day to day. That's the point of holidays like this, right? We don't remember very often that people have given up a sacrifice like that. Is it crazy that we can forget minute by minute what Jesus did? You know what I'm going to be happy for in heaven? You know, the no more sorrow and joy and all that stuff is awesome. Number one, I'm going to be really thankful that I can't sin anymore. I guess. I think I can't. That I don't have to repent and I don't have to grieve the heart of God. That's going to be awesome. The other thing is I will never forget how great he is in heaven. I can't imagine you could ever forget. Did I tell you guys this? There was a VeggieTales video that I was watching. Did I say this a couple weeks ago? I was watching this. Did I say it in the huddle? I can't remember where I say things. I was watching this VeggieTales video and it was like a play on It's a Wonderful. Anyway, there's an angel, and the guy was like, oh, it was Gideon. And Gideon was talking to this angel, and he's like, man, I forget all the time how powerful God is. Do you ever do that? And the angel's like, no, I see him every day. I'm like, right. This guy never forgets. One day we will be in his presence and we will never forget. But right now we forget. And so the thing that we have to exercise is gratitude. Saying thank you, like we did earlier tonight. Like we do, hopefully, daily. Every single night before bed, we try to ask the kids, what are you thankful for? You know, sometimes it's my butt. I'm not kidding. That comes up a lot. My butt. I'm thankful for my butt. You know, it's hilarious. Everybody laughs for 10 minutes. Sweet, funny. Sometimes it's you, Mommy, which is wonderful. And sometimes it's like, my new thing, or treats, or whatever, you know. But something. I mean, do we do that? Do we exercise gratitude like that? To say thank you for, okay, I don't have a car, but we do have a free bus system that will literally get us anywhere in the county for free. Right? I mean, things like that are like, we grumble and we complain, we have everything. We have it all. So if we want to give offerings like this, we have to exercise trust and gratitude. One more story. And when I finish just reading the story, we're going to just play a song for a couple minutes. And just kind of reflect on these different areas and ask the Lord if there's anything that I need to give up. Anything. Luke 7:36 through 47. One of the Pharisees asked Jesus over for a meal. He went to the Pharisee's house and sat down at the dinner table. Just then a woman of the village, the town harlot, having learned that Jesus was a guest in the home of the Pharisee, came. This harlot came to a Pharisee's house. That's gutsy. Came with a bottle of very expensive perfume and stood at his feet weeping, raining tears on his feet. Letting down her hair, she dried his feet, kissed them, and anointed them with perfume. When the Pharisee who had invited him saw this, he said to himself, if this man was a prophet, was the prophet I thought he was, he would have known what kind of woman this is who is falling all over him. Jesus said to Simon, Simon, I have something to tell you. Oh, tell me. 2 men were in debt to a banker. One owed 500 silver pieces, the other 50. Neither of them could pay up, and so the banker canceled both debts. Which of the 2 would be more grateful? Simon answered, I suppose the one who was forgiven the most. That's right, said Jesus. Then turning to the woman, but speaking to Simon, he said, do you see this woman? I came to your home. You provided no water for my feet, but she rained tears on my feet and dried them with her hair. You gave me no greeting, but from the time I arrived, she hasn't quit kissing my feet. You provided nothing for freshening up, but she has soothed my feet with perfume. Impressive, isn't it? She was forgiven many, many sins, and so she is very, very grateful. If the forgiveness is minimal, the gratitude is minimal. And I would add, if the gratitude is minimal, the offering will be minimal.